Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Real Resilience Talk podcast. I'm still Coach Cam Campbell. Follow me at Coach Cam _Campbell on Instagram and all the things. But this is episode 89, my friends, of the Real Resilience Talk. And it's really, it's a privilege today to come to y'all on this episode. As always, no one on the show is a certified doctor, and we're not giving medical advice. Don't try to sue us. We're not lawyers, anything like that. We're just card carrying, in this case, Americans and veterans, using our First Amendment and trying to do some good in the world. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I have an awesome guest, a comedian friend, a mentor of mine, someone I look up to a whole lot. He is an advisor. He is an author. He is a speaker. He is, again, a stand-up comedian, but he's a dad and a husband. And for the majority of his life, he has served and protected our Constitution while serving in the United States Army. So without further ado, everybody give it up for the one, the only Joe Buccino.
Yeah.
The fireworks.
Love it. Love it,
man. Hey, welcome to the show, boss. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. As you know, I'm in a new job on the Hill. My days are stressful, but
Yes.
It's good. It's the good kind of, I guess, busy, the good kind of stress. So
Yes. That's
gets
awesome,
me
man.
excited. You know, it's important, as you know, to when you've been in the military for as long as you and I have, to do something that kind of fills that hole and
Yeah.
gets you excited for your feet to hit the floor every morning, and it's like, let's get after it today. What are we doing today? You know what I mean? Like,
That's right.
how do I provide value? How do I offer value to the organization, to my leadership? I've got a team of 7 people. How do I lead them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so to me, that's exciting.
I love it because, I mean, you're continuing service. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, you retired, but like you can repurpose. And that's what I see you doing with the arts, with the authoring, with the advising, with being on the Hill. You're repurposed. You just repurposed your service to a cause still bigger than you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think some people could be critical of why I'm working in the Trump administration or working for the Republicans, and people can be critical. That's fine. I think that you know, what I do is I add value to the discourse, and I try to sort of focus on things that are winning issues for most of the country. You know,
Yes.
so that's kind of how I'm focusing it. You know, we've had a lot of successes before I got here in terms of tax cuts for working families and tax cuts for farmers, and you know, how can we talk about that and tout those successes, because those are the things that everybody can get behind.
Yeah, like you said, all the people, you know, we the people, all the people, and doing things for the majority of us. I appreciate it. And I'm purple as it is with everything.
Yeah,
So remember back in the day, we used to have the blue and red stickers on our cars for
yeah,
officer
yeah.
enlisted, and I was a Mustang, so I was like, I'm purple, and like I'm like that politically, I'm like that on everything, and I think I think it's good to be open minded to anybody's approach to see what can do the best for all of us. So I'm all about it, man. But just to keep it the script of my show real quick, I want to ask you, because I know it plays into what you do, what you've done, but what's your definition of resilience? And please share that and expand. And if you want to share any of your background past the introduction I gave, please do.
Yeah, my definition of resilience is just getting through each day. So when I first came out of the Army, I came out of the Army very quickly. Like, all of a sudden, I had a retirement date, and we were doing Israel-Gaza in CENTCOM, in the Middle East Command. And I worked up until 11:30. My retirement ceremony was at 1 p.m. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it was nuts. I had no time to retire. I had no time to, maybe, I think, process everything that was happening. And I also felt like I'd maybe missed an opportunity to just put a bow on my career in a really meaningful way. And so I did have a nice ceremony. A lot of people were there. A lot of people who cared about me were there. But when I left, I didn't have, like, you know, I kind of went into consulting, which was good. But before I found this job, consulting, you're kind of like parachuting into other people's problems, and then you're solving problems for Fortune 100 companies, and they have their own comms teams, and they're looking at you like, why'd they bring this guy in? And it's
Who
like,
are you?
Yeah, they brought me in because you weren't managing this problem correctly. So, you know, to me, it was like, all right, let's get through this day. Let's get through today. And eventually we're going to, and I really did believe this, that let's get through today. And then eventually we're going to find something that I can thrive in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I do think that, I had a soldier in Afghanistan in 2013 who took his own life there out there in eastern Paktika province. Dan Quintana, and again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, neither are you, but I feel like if we could have sat on that guy and kept him alive, I do think that you can get to a point where you can thrive. And I think, we have great science behind these things. We have great medicine behind these things. We have talk therapy, and these things have advanced so much that I think that, if you can stay alive, survive this day,
Survive this day.
you're
Yes.
going to get to a point where you can thrive.
Hmm.
Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you can thrive. That's what I think about, real resilience. Real resilience is, you know, I've had a lot of hardships since I left the army.
Hmm.
And, I don't really talk about all of them, but I've had a lot of hardships, but I now view them as like these were great, off ramps that the Lord gave me. And I've just become religious in the last couple of months, but I've been given these off ramps, and there's been an opportunity at the end of them. And so to me, it's like, okay, my path is this way. I want to go this way. My life is this way. My life is oriented towards this. And it's like, no, that's the ego speaking. That's
Man.
that's not for me to determine that. That's because everything could be taken from you, Cam. Your finances could be taken from you. Your house could be taken from you. Your career could be taken from you. All these things can be taken from you, and that's why you have to live within the self and always cling tight to your family, because your family is not going to abandon you, and you're not going to abandon your family. That's your main responsibility in life. So, that's the way I think about it, man. It's like this this life I wanted to live and this path I wanted to create for myself. It's not for me. It's
Hmm.
whenever the ego is giving you direction, distance and direction, like you do in land navigation. Sometimes you could be lost. You're lost out there, and so you're going to the wrong place. And so you just got to find and identify what is it that life's pulling you in the middle of. What is it that the Lord is pulling you to? And I found it. I found it, and I think everybody else listening to this can find it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really appreciate the emphasis on not just surviving but thriving.
Yeah,
It's not just, Dr. Craig Bryan has said it. He said he had a book, Rethinking Suicide. He says in there, he says, to do suicide prevention well, we have to do more than just stop people from dying. We have to also make a life worth living. And
yeah,
it sounds to me that even after your service, and I think all of us who leave, whether it's 4 years or 40 years, there is a identity, there's a loss of connection, there can be a loss of purpose. So I think it's admirable that you weathered those storms of kind of being in the middle on things and then finding a path. And then it sounds to me, if I heard you correctly, like faith has played a part in that, connection with family has played a part in that, and then serving something bigger than you. Because we used to always say, and I still stick by, it's not about me, it's about us. And whenever you can find that, as you described, finding it, that matters.
yeah,
And I know you've expressed that very eloquently on the importance of mattering.
yeah. It's interesting too because when you're in the military, you're with just the greatest people.
Yes.
And you also have every military unit has this great purpose, whatever that is. And you're not making any money, so you're doing it for the love of the game. You're doing it
Yeah.
because you love people. If you stay in as long as you and I have, you're doing it because you love troops. And
That's
I
right.
love soldiers, man. I love 82nd Airborne. You know, I used to say that in the 82nd Airborne, you get 120 people out of a plane for an airborne operation. And you've got kids there that are like scared to death, right? Because they've never done it before. They've only done it in airborne school. And everybody there is relying on six people that they've never met. That your life is in the hands of six people that you never met. You know, the jump masters and the load masters. And those people love you. They care about you. They're going to make sure you get out of that aircraft safely, that you hit the drop zone safely. And so that's just a very cool thing to have and a way to go through. That's why I loved everything about airborne operations. And so, you know, for me, when I left the Army, is like you have this huge hole you got to fill. Because
Yes.
I went from working like 18-hour days just thinking about Iran, thinking about Iran, thinking about Iran, and then I'm out of it. And
Yeah.
everybody else, you know, the Army song tells you the Army keeps rolling along, keeps rolling along without you. And all the people that were rolling along with you, they're still doing it. And it's like, oh man, now I'm out here in Alexandria, Virginia. I gotta find my own network. I gotta find my own people. I gotta find a purpose. I gotta figure this out.
Right.
And it's a scary place to be, man.
It really is that tribe. And it, you know, for anyone listening that may be a veteran or left, you know, some type of service organization, whether it's first responder or, you know, the teaching, the professions that identify, like you identify your as, and you know, you say, I'm a teacher, I'm a firefighter, I'm a police officer, I'm a Marine, I'm a soldier, da 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 da. Those types. It's really important that we find and connect with the tribe. And it's not to say you can't reach back to friends and, you know, military family that's still serving. It's just different now, but to find that next tribe. And that's how I met you, was I think in both of us finding a tribe within the comedy community of, you know, this greater DMV area. And that's helped me in my transition with having a tribe of those individuals, having you and just other people that are veterans and non, but that are, you know, we're kind of like this little island of broken toys doing this thing together. And there's a sense of community.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, you know, I'm not really doing it as much anymore, but it really is, you know, some people that have a little bit, they view life a little bit differently than everybody else. They see things other people don't see, and that's a cool community to be in. And, you know, I did some research on this for my book, When Every Word Counts, which is available now. But
Yes, everybody, when every word counts. And I got to ask you about the title. I want to talk so much about this, but
yeah,
I've read some of it, and I'm
yeah,
telling you, I told you before we started recording, it made me, I just was like, all right, well, I guess I don't have to write my book that I was working on because this dude just wrote. I was like, get out of my head, Joe. And then I
yeah,
realized how smart he said it. I was like, he's not inside my head, but he's saying the exact same things I wanted. So it spoke to my soul, man. Just a little bit
yeah.
I did read.
Well, thanks. Well, let me just make this point is that we used to have in this country, you know, coming out of World War II, the VFW halls, the Veterans of Foreign Wars halls,
Yes.
they were packed with veterans, you know, at the end of every day, on weekends, and that sustained through the end of the Vietnam War. And it's sustained through, you know, kind of like the end of the Vietnam era. And you had veterans in there. They were drinking beers. They were talking. They're communicating. They're telling their stories. You know, these guys love to tell stories. And you had that real social network where people are actually face to face talking with one another, fellow veterans, and you know, telling their own stories because people want to be remembered. People want to tell their stories. The fact that we've kind of gone away from that, and these VFW halls are empty on the weekend, I'm convinced has contributed to the rise in veteran suicide. People don't go to, you know, our generation of veterans don't hang around VFW halls.
It's true. It's true.
Um, and, you know, our generation of veterans is on our stupid fucking phones. You know, we're always
Yeah. It's true.
tweeting, texting, and all this shit. And so, you know, VFW halls are closing all over the country, and if they're not closing, they have very little money for events and to bring troops in. I think it's a shame we've lost that. You know, it
Yeah.
really is. I think that was a real, almost a great equalizer for the American veteran to have a place where you're in there. There's not civilians in there. There's your own tribe is in there, and you're talking about your experiences and your stories. You know.
Agree, because we all want to, you know, I mean, you eloquently express it, like we all want to matter, we all want to be having some form of a legacy, and we want to belong and to be accepted, not just heard, but fully acknowledged in things. And I agree with you that some of the institutions, the organizations, whether it be church or whether it be the VFWs, just a lot of the things that were kind of by default in previous generations, we have fell away from. And I'm not telling everybody to run off and go to church. I'm not telling everybody go run to your American Legion and your VFW and et cetera, et cetera. But it was there, and it did have a good effect because there was that social tribe in any camp on what I just described that now lacks. And you're right, a lot of our GWAT modern veterans, we are on devices, we are online, and there could be some form of, belonging in that. I'm not dissing that 100%, but there's nothing like what you said, that face-to-face interaction, that face-to-face sharing. Can't replace that.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily telling people to go out and do those things either, but there's worse things you can do for your time and worse things
Yes.
you can do for your mental health than go to church or go to a VFW hall. I do think that we have a real mental health crisis in this country. I don't think we have a homelessness crisis. I think what you see is people that need mental health, that need to be on medicine, that need to be treated. I think if we throw, you look at the inner cities in this country right now, if you just throw housing at a lot of those people, they're going to be homeless shortly anyway. There's a lot of people who are undiagnosed. There are a lot of people who are just roaming the streets that are lost souls that
Yeah.
are in desperate need of mental health. And there's a lot of veterans in there that are now
true.
homeless.
Sad but true.
And it's not because they haven't managed their money well. It's because they, in some cases, cannot manage their money well. They can't think in a linear way or can't think in a rational way. And I think, we've got a real crisis on our hands with that.
I concur. It's a crisis. It's a mental health crisis. It's like that nihilistic thinking you can find yourself in. I've been there before in life where you feel like nothing matters and nothing else matters. And sometimes what you described in the beginning of the definition of resilience, that getting through each day, that living one more day, seems like that doesn't even matter. And then the consequences and the outcomes that result from that thought process, it's real. And I agree that there's a lot of us that are not fully diagnosed properly, not getting the care that we need, and homelessness, displaced, whatever you want to say, you're suffering in isolation. And I see that as a very common trend, and people not feeling as though they belong to anything or anyone, so nothing matters.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Got to love each other, man.
Yeah, it's true. And everyone out there that's, waiting on somebody else to fix it, I just challenge you, and I try to challenge myself with the show and different things. And I'm not saying this is bragging, but, what Mother Teresa said it, to promote world peace. How do you do it? You go home and you love your family. That's how you do it. You look for the thing closest to you and you take care of those around you, in your community, on your street, on your neighborhood, in your city. And that's where you can really affect change and see outcomes. To sit back and problem admire or wait for somebody else to fix it just doesn't usually happen. Most things that happen in America start grassroots and it grows. Very rarely is there every top-down things that fix everything. It takes that connectedness, that community. And instead of problem admiring, why don't we get out there and roll our sleeves up and try to make it better? Just try.
Yeah.
That could give you that purpose, right? Whatever it is in your area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think just, I always think that you want to have a good name and a good reputation, but you want to have a good name and a good reputation for yourself. So how do I view myself? Well, you got to view yourself, I think, as somebody everybody wants to consider themselves to be good people. Well, I'm a good person. I go out, and it's small things. It's like small courtesies. It's treating everybody with dignity and respect. I think we became so polarized here. It really started during the Obama years. We became, not as a result of the Obama administration, but
just during that time frame.
the Republican backlash and the Tea Party backlash to Obama. Every state almost in this country became divided to where, because we used to not really have red and blue states. We'd have states that would swing almost every state in the union would swing one way or the other. We've become so polarized where I'm in this camp, you're in that camp, you support this policy, I support this policy. And it's not enough that we have people that have different opinions. It's like, you hold a different opinion from me, you're a terrible person. You're a piece of shit.
Yes, yes.
You shouldn't even be a citizen. You hold a different opinion from me, therefore you're a Nazi. And it's like, okay, you can't go anywhere. It's escalation without end. You can't go anywhere once you call somebody a Nazi. Once you say this person's a piece of shit and shouldn't be in the country. You know, we can love each other. We used
Yes.
to love each other as a community and still have a difference of opinion. You know, then came, the rise of AM radio and Rush Limbaugh and these conservative talkers. And now it's on social media, so it's always in your back pocket or in your breast pocket, always on your phone, always on social media. And you know, to me, it's really, I think it's putting a lot of pressure on society in general, on American society in general, and on relationships. People are, it's destroying families. It's really a terrible thing, the way that politicization in across the country has had an impact on people's mental health and on their lives.
I couldn't agree more. And I actually, I'm wearing this shirt not on purpose. I just wear it a lot of times. But, it's that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate can't drive out hate. Only love can do that. And that's from Dr. King. And technically speaking, he was a card-carrying Republican. So it really doesn't matter about the party and all of that stuff. I think we do need to have a more open mind on speaking to others and at least acknowledging that, okay, I don't agree with you on specific comma or dot or end of sentence or word placement. But as you said, I do love you as a fellow, as a brother or a sister in this human world, in this American world. And we've gotten away from that. And I want to say that I don't want to put it all on them to fix it all, but I think there needs to be a little bit more ethics and middle ground emphasis on the use of social media. And of course, when we listen to our Pandora station, we want to hear what we thumbs up and we want to have it procured to, our playlist or whatever like that. But, when you listen to these playlists and you just listen to, the regular radio, you miss out on the rest of the album, right? Like the rest of the album is really good. It's just you only know the hits or you only know the registered things that hit the Billboard. And sometimes some of my favorite songs, like Linkin Park, My December, or, the 13th Elevator and Outkast ATLiens. That wasn't on the radio. That wasn't in mainstream, and most people aren't going to have that pop up on their playlist. And I say the same thing for when it comes to anything political or anything that's divisive. Everyone is stuck in their own little echo chamber, their own algorithm, and it doesn't matter what side they're on. The other side is opposed to you, and they're like an enemy instead of, hey, they have a difference of opinion. And that's what I think this idea of America is founded on, that we can all live together and still feel differently at times, and that's okay. But you're only getting your feed, and I don't think that's helping us. That's why I say the ethics. And there's a documentary called The Cost of Convenience I watched the other night, and it's really powerful in how we're just stuck in these chambers of our own, our own little tribe, and it's specific to you, so it can get extreme. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I love it, man. I feel like, and I love the quote, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Because there's a chapter in the book towards the end called Figures of Light. And that's the thing, is we're all figures of light.
That's true.
Every human that you come across is a figure of light. We're all made of the same luminous stuff as stars. And we're all flickering and fragile. And we're also all waiting to be seen. And so I think, if you can find that light in other people, in everyone, you can cast out that darkness. And so I think, the social media companies, they have a financial interest in you living in darkness. Traditional media, they have a financial interest in you living in darkness. Fortune 100 companies, this place where I am right now, Capitol Hill, they have an interest in you living in darkness, that you hate each other, that the other person is evil, that your neighbor is a terrible person. And that's not true. We are all figures of light. And so we've got to find that light within one another.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And it's, shine your light. But sometimes, what is to give light must endure burning. And there's that as well, as Viktor Frankl said. But I really love in your book, again, When Every Word Counts is the name of it. It's available now. Joe Buccino. It's such a fair and equal display of thoughts and cohesiveness. And I just think it could bring people together if they read it in the right manner, and even in their organizations. Or I was reading it, man, that chapter 6 you got. I was reading on just how many times, like, I read it and I apologized to my wife this morning, and I was like, I'm sorry if I don't make you feel seen, or if I'm so busy doing all this other stuff, I don't acknowledge you, because as you describe in that chapter 6 about, we want to matter, we want to let our light shine, but it also, like you said, to be seen. And I think we fail at that. I fail at that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the chapter is called Everybody Wants to Be Remembered.
That's right.
And that's a basic principle of social sciences. Abraham Maslow, he had the hierarchy of needs. The top need was connection,
That's right.
belonging to something, that your stories matter, that the struggles, life is a series of struggles. Those struggles have to mean something.
Yes.
Within your life and beyond your life. And so, that chapter, it opens with the very first Homo sapien. This is a true story. The very first Homo sapiens, 36,000 years ago, they would paint their hand and put an imprint of their hand on a wall. They had no alphabet, they had no writing, they had no way of communicating, and they were largely living among the animals. The animals couldn't understand or see that. That was just a statement that I am here, I was here,
Yes.
I existed. And so it's a basic urge that goes back 36,000 years, that's been a primal impulse throughout the human race, that notion that I was seen, I was here, my struggles matter.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I love how you had the header on it too. I'm looking at it. I have so many highlights. I don't even know what's important, what's not, but it was that desire to be seen. And you say in there that we all want our struggles to mean something. We want our sacrifices to be witnessed, and we want our contributions to register with the people around us, to not merely be acknowledged, but genuinely received. Beyond that, to be remembered. And you said in here, when you talked about Maslow, you said it's the oldest hunger. It's the oldest hunger, and that's what that hand on that wall was. If you were listening, on that cave, everyone, like, that human wanted to be seen, and it's something that's different from us and all the other species that live on this earth. And I don't think they have the same, going on in their ecosystem or in their hierarchy of needs. But man, we are beings built to notice and be noticed by other human beings. That's powerful. And there's so many of us, like you described, homelessness, displacement, whatever the case may be. They feel disillusioned, they feel disenchanted, they feel disconnected, and they don't feel seen. And I agree with you that we have a mental health crisis, and I think a lot of it is in that isolation and in that being displaced and not feeling seen, or that you're important, that you matter, or, like you said, the sacrifices you're making don't matter. And we'll put up with anything, a sick child in the middle of the night. We'll go out without sleep on a mission, whatever the case is, when it has a meaning to it. When it has no meaning, I'm over here plagiarizing Dr. Viktor Frankl, to find the meaning in the suffering or in the sacrifice.
Yeah, and there's a real, I think, leadership angle to this. When I think about, when a lot of what I do is I counsel and coach up leaders in critical situations, in crisis moments. And the first one I worked on when I came out of the Army was Alaska Airlines. The door came off the plane, the Boeing plane, and I went into Boeing, and it was a really tough time for the mechanics who'd worked on that plane, because they'd gone through 5 years of bad press. You had, if you remember, with the Boeing, you had the 737 MAX crashes. They had waves of layoffs. They had to fire the previous CEO, and now they had a door come off the plane while in flight. And so, what I told the CEO is, bring everybody in, bring literally everybody in, do it over 7 sessions. We had to do it over 7 sessions because we didn't have a place big enough. And don't talk to them about the engineering qualities of the door, or here's how we're going to make sure that we fit the door frame correctly from now on. Just tell them that I see the moment that you're in right now. You did not come into this business to make faulty parts to these planes. You came in here because you care deeply about the flying public. I'm in this with you. I'm feeling this with you. I'm acknowledging your emotion. And he did that, and it really reset the room and reset the entire organization. We ended up, or they ended up, in a better position reputationally than when they started, because we started with acknowledge. I have the AAA system here. Um, Acknowledge, align, and then act. Everybody just wants to act in a critical
That's
moment.
so
Every leader just
true.
wants to act, and it's like, okay, you're acting without acknowledging with your people and aligning on a way forward. You're acting, and you're just going to make things worse. You're the guy in quicksand who's like trying to whirl his way out of it. And so, one passage I have here is leaders who understand the art of being seen do not lead with data in a crisis. They lead with presence. They lead with the acknowledgement that what is happening to the people in the room is real, difficult, and worthy of attention. Only then can strategy truly land. And that's been true through every crisis I've managed. And I've done a lot of them. I've done a lot of the big ones. Some of them are under non-disclosure agreements, so I can't talk about them or write
Right.
about them. But if you think about a major crisis that's happened, between 2024 and now, there's probably a 40% chance I was involved in it.
But that AAA, that acknowledging it, not trying to dismiss it and not just getting straight to act, but then that align. What I see, implicitly in there is when you align, and I've already acknowledged we are connecting, and that matters. And you even say, and then there's the act, but you say in here too that the cost, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the cost of making people feel unseen is not just emotional and organizational terms. It could be catastrophic, because now I feel that I don't matter. I'm not connected. And obviously whoever is the leader in the situation is as acting, and we say decisiveness, that's great, but there has to be some strategy in there. So the strategy, as you described, will land. And if your people feel unseen and disconnected, it's probably not going to work out. Am I reading
Yeah,
that right?
absolutely, absolutely. And so act is the first thing that leaders gravitate to. I'm a leader. I'm a type A personality. I've had all this success. I'm decisive. I'm fast. This is the thing we're going to do. That's why I made act the last part of the system, because
Yes.
there's steps you've got to do there. You've got to get your organization emotionally vested in what you're trying to do. You've got to get your organization feeling like they're part of this solution. So you've
Mm-hmm.
got to acknowledge their emotion. That doesn't mean emotion drives the decision cycle. That's not a good thing. But you've got to sit in that emotion with them and then align. Like, okay, here's the way that we're going to get through this crisis together, and then you move to act.
No, I mean, yeah, you have to. And I think we have so much emphasis on act, so much emphasis on decisiveness, that we can lose that part of that compassion, that kind of empathy that you need for leadership. But I also want to point out, and you broke this down with science, and you cite everything, but the science of being seen, right? And you say that, and it's from Matthew Lieberman from USCLA, a neuroscientist, but that this is where it really jumped out at me, that we're in that fight, flight, freeze, and then fawn, and we're in that limbic system, we're in that lizard brain. But when you are acknowledged, when acknowledging a person rather than trying to reason them out of it and give them happy talk or persuade them or any of that, it reduces activity in the amygdala and increases prefrontal engagement. So you are literally calming the situation right there by acknowledging that person and making them feel seen. Because if you don't, and you go on to explain that we escalate and we get into that defense mode as the person that's in the situation. So you can see how what you said, it could be catastrophic because of lack of acknowledgement, a lack of alignment, and then we're just getting to act, and that's not going to work out. Good leaders or anybody. That's not just at an organization. That's not just in a corporation or a military unit. That's in our families.
Yeah,
You know, that's
yeah,
that's in our families.
yeah.
And I thought it was really cool too in the book in chapter 7 you talked about just sometimes doing nothing. And that as a person who puts the high definition ADHD, you see me fidgeting around here the whole time and taking notes. I'm fucking around with this stuff, that stuff. I really needed that, man. And I've had a recent situation where my initial reaction to something was to go full on defense mode of somebody who I felt was being mischaracterized and misrepresented. And I went straight to the source and I was like, hey, you ain't got the story right, but in the situation you described, you just said, hey, do nothing. It's going to blow over. And it's just impeccable timing for me in a certain situation I'm in right now.
Yeah, I think that when you're in a big company, when you're in a Fortune 100 company, you view all information as risk. And so if you see something that's in a trade, you see something that's online, well, we need to react to this. We need to put something out. We need to put a statement out. We need to do something. We need to say something. We need to change our operation. And there's so much information out there right now. There's so much online. There's so much that we can put in our ears on podcasts. There's so much on AI that whatever that is, that little blip on the radar that's out there right now,
Hmm.
you're going to make it worse if you say something publicly about it. You're going to make it worse if you go to the source and try to adjudicate it with emotion. In 72 hours, is anybody going to be thinking about this or worried about this? Or, I mean, I'm watching, I'm not watching, but I got Fox News up right now. Okay, nothing's going to break through the news today because the president's at the G7 summit, and we're about to sign presumably this Iran deal. Okay, so what's going to break through that? Nothing really. So, you've got to have an understanding of the way the information environment works right now, that things that you think are important are going to be gone. They're going to be gone in a nanosecond. So, overreacting to things, or sometimes reacting at all to things, can be the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, it reminds me, and it maybe because you said the country that you said, but I remember reading, God rest his soul, but in the Honorable Mr. Powell, Colin Powell's book, he
Yeah.
said it worked for me. He talked about when there was that incident of the airliner coming down, and the first report he got as national security advisor was that the airplane was attacking, and the people on the ground wanted to attack more than just taking care of that plane that came at them and what they perceived. And he told them, no, and like, sit on it for a second. Let me talk to the president. Let us go forward. Give it a few hours and then we know what came to be, that it wasn't as what was described. And he was saying basically that to not have a knee-jerk reaction, because you can actually make a situation worse. Or as you described with the information age that we're in, if I disagree with something vehemently, as I did, which with something I read the other day, on not all of it, but in a lot of the accounts of it, and I go share it and say, hey, this is the part I disagree with. Well, now I've put it out there in my own circle, and now people that probably wouldn't even have noticed it are now like, what's he disagree with? And then now it's resurfaced again, as you described with the article and the piece that was done in chapter 7. So you can kind of you give it more fuel, you give it more fire, when you could
Yeah.
just let it burn out. Am I
Yeah.
reading that right? Am I interpreting that the right way?
Absolutely. Yeah, you really are. Yeah. Yeah, I think, another idea that's in the book, and it's maybe a little bit later in the book, is that I think you and I may have had similar upbringings, in that I had a very chaotic childhood, and you know, I guess I'd probably just leave it at that, but it was not ideal. And so I was raised by people who I never met. I was raised in the Deer Park Public Library, just reading all these books. Those were my people. Those authors were my people. Those characters were my people. And I grew kind of internal. And so, you have that. I know you talk about Martin Luther King a lot, and one of the great quotes is, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And I just have this passage at the end of the book. If I can I just read this? It's not going to
Yes,
take very.
please do, please.
So this is called Sadia's Generation. My daughter's name is Sadia, and she's a character throughout the book. And so I'll just read this. So Sadia and her peers have already lived through multiple society-shaking events: the COVID pandemic, the proliferation of deepfakes and disinformation, the grotesque influence of podcasters like Joe Rogan on national policy, the head-spinning acceleration of AI, and the fall, and rise of Donald Trump. There was the January 6, 2021 insurrection, the horrific attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, and the resultant images of charred corpses of Gazan children. Sadia, my daughter, observed the confused messaging around the 2026 war with Iran as is playing out as of this writing. Her generation stood tall in their own critical moments, rising to support the Black Lives Matter movement in the wake of police murders of unarmed black men, understanding and supporting the trans community, and the necessary awakening brought by the Me Too movement. The upheaval of American society in the 1960s in the face of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement compressed and surpassed, all in about 4 years in her lifetime. One thing she's learned from her youth is that the moral arc of the universe does not bend towards justice, not naturally anyway. It must be bent by humans acknowledging one another, finding the beating hearts in their fellow humans, and meeting one another where they are emotionally. The human act of communication will win out only if the youth of today fight for it. There is so much meaning to be found in that, and so much to be lost if it's not fought.
Wow. I mean, it's so much stuff going on in these last 10 to 15 years that it's when you kind of did the the Sports Center of the highlight, it is. That is a lot, but I love that you said the emphasis on the communication and seeing the beating heart of another human, even if you don't agree with them, even if they look different, or whatever the case may be, and that will win out over time. Man, that's beautiful. I can't wait to get that part of the book. That's really good.
Yeah, and what I do appreciate, and then maybe we can leave it on this, is that what I do appreciate is that a lot of kids of her generation, I just went to her graduation, her college graduation.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Dear.
Yeah, she's awesome. Yeah, she's awesome. A lot of her kids of her generation have deleted Twitter and Instagram off of their phones. It's too toxic, it's too dangerous, it's too harmful to mental health, and they're moving away from it, and they're moving towards actually something that's a lost art for our generation, which is we grew up talking to one another face to face.
That's right.
And I think that's become a little bit lost to our generation. Her generation is moving towards that, I hope.
That is beautiful.
Subsequent generations, yeah.
No, I agree. And honestly, man, if it wasn't for comedy or doing this and trying to move things and the books I've written, I'll be honest, man, I would not be on there. But it does. It sometimes it's a necessary evil. I don't want to say it's totally evil. It's like anything. It's how you use it.
Yeah.
But these things use us. So that's the difference. The ingenuity behind it, the engineering of this thing actually uses us. And I think one of the most important things that jumped out at me was Dr. Anna Lembke. I love her a lot. She wrote Dopamine Nation. She was in the documentary Social Dilemma that was on Netflix. I really encourage everyone to watch that and just take a peek at it. But she says that if, all these things are free, if the product is free, you are the product. That was groundbreaking for me on all of these. Fill in the blank on the thing, because data is such a coveted resource right now, and currency. So I think that's beautiful that her generation is moving more towards that. And if it's not something you have to use, then maybe not use it. I try to not use it, but I know some of the algorithms, they want you to interact and this and that, but it's like I try to share other people's stuff, announce things, but keep it very limited, because it can use you. And I do think it has a lot to do with our mental health decline in the years. It's not the only thing, but it is a very huge contributor.
Yeah. And I guess maybe the last thing I'll say is that, I wasn't like a huge supporter of Charlie Kirk, but I appreciated what he did. I think there's value in going someplace, particularly to college-age kids, and pushing them on what they believe and pushing back against their beliefs, because that's the beginning of wisdom.
Really is.
When you start questioning somebody on what they believe, the beginning of wisdom is humility. It really is. Because once you have humility, you can have love for other people, and once you have love for other people, you can see that maybe the things that you believe are wrong, or what that person believes is right. And, I think when we start labeling other people, or people who are Trump supporters or Republicans, as Nazis, if somebody's a Nazi, we have to rise up against them, right? That if somebody's part of the Nazi movement, or the Nazi movement is growing, we have to rise up against them physically. We have to take, if necessary, take violence into the streets. So there is no other way of having a conversation if somebody's a Nazi. Like, similarly, if somebody is a Democrat, somebody's a Kamala Harris supporter, somebody supports trans rights, well, you're a piece of shit and you shouldn't be in the country. Well, there is no way to have a conversation from there.
That's right.
There's no, your starting point is that this person is a vile figure, and there's no conversation to be had. They have to be defeated, not just defeated in an argument, but they have to be humiliated, and not just humiliated, but they have to be shown that they're wrong, and not just shown that they're wrong. They have to be forced out of the country, and that thinking has to be forced out of the country, and then that's where you've got this kind of this polarization and this violence that you see. These violent attacks against elected officials, against public figures, and just violence in our streets. And then it translates into families. I know a guy who's not talking to his mother-in-law, and the whole family's not talking to the mother-in-law because she's a Trump supporter. Okay. You can't get past that. You can't, there's not other things in life you can get past. And so, I think we've got to work past this. It's one of the reasons I think, live sporting events is still so important in this country, because
So
it's one of the
important.
things. Yeah, I mean, and it's, I think for men, it's important. I think that men have a thing or a place or some concept where they can talk to other men, because it's kind of discouraged that men talk about their feelings and talk about one another. But sports allows that for people, and I think it's a really important institution in this country.
What is? Yeah, I studied this course on that, the sociology of sports, and in any melting pot in history, like the real melting pots,
Hmm.
Rome, Greece, all at Sparta, the sports are always at the forefront of society because we really can't agree on much else. So we can all come together no matter what our stance is, and we can all go roll tide or go Knicks or go Yankees or whatever the case may be, because we both have that shared thing. And to me, it highlights the point of, or the benefit in what your daughter's is doing and what the other people of her generation are doing, and we can all learn something from them, is that we're more alike than unalike. And Maya Angelou said that in a beautiful poem, everybody, Human Family. You could probably Google it for free, but Human Family, it describes that like we're more alike than unalike. So when you say something as simple as a Trump supporter or this or that, or you automatically brand this other kind of person, whatever the case may be, you're this, you're that. It honestly, I've been a person who's been mischaracterized and mislabeled, and it makes me want to be like, you know what? Then I'll be that. And I would,
Yeah,
and you're more invigorated to be even more of the things that, and it creates more division as you, the person receiving that, form of oppression or isolation or whatever the case may be. So it's really not healthy for anyone. It pushes us away, and then it makes other people be like, well, fine, then I will be a fill in the blank, and I'll
yeah,
show you. And like you said, our starting point is at a point of no return. So that it's hard to have a conversation, but just remember, we're more alike than unalike, and we need to find common ground. And I think we all really are more alike than unalike, and we want the same things. All of us, we the people, all the people, and we got to get past this. But it's not going to happen by being more divisive or taking it to the streets. That's not going to work good. History shows us that, and we learn from history that we don't always learn from history. So do what you did. Go to a deer park, read some books, question your beliefs. George Carlin said it, question everything. So, and then find out, why do you feel this way, or maybe you'll feel differently, or maybe you'll be further armed with information to know your decision.
yeah. Maybe just, and I know I keep saying this is the last thing, but I do got to go. But I do want to. This is an important point to make, is that I started writing this book when I was 44, and in the course of writing the book, my thinking was, I was raised by a single mom who had undiagnosed bipolar, and that's not a good place to be. Um, but it's like I have these toxic traits, and that's because of my upbringing. I can't. That's not my fault. What the fuck you want me to do about it? I was
Yeah.
raised in this, and at a certain point in your life, you have to take account for your own actions and your own behavior around other people and your own treatment of other people. And you've got to get the way to do that is, there's a lot of ways to get help, and you've got to get help for it. So I think just living and sitting in that, well, I had this fucked up childhood. I'm going to have these toxic traits, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. I think that's a losing mentality, and frankly, I think you're always going to be a loser if you think along those lines. At a certain point, you've got to take responsibility for your own actions, and even look at, okay, I was raised um, in this situation by somebody who had this disease, and it was undiagnosed. At the time, it was not talked about. Well, maybe I can take the good and the bad with her, because there were some good qualities. There were some good moments. There were some moments when she tried. There's some things she left me with in terms of like ambition and trying to get to the next level of things. So I think it's important that you break that chain in this cycle. Otherwise, the cycle is going to continue.
Wow. There's nothing more to be said on that. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, man, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your service that you've done, for raising good humans, for being a light, man. You really are. I know we all are,
We all are.
as you described,
Yeah.
but you really shine your light in a way. And I'll be honest, we've had conversations. We don't agree on every issue, but as a fellow human, as a fellow veteran, as a fellow American, man, I do love you, and I got a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate your approach to things because it's logical. I watch you when you give correspondence on TV, and it's always a fair and equal assessment of things, and your book is too, y'all. Y'all got to check it out. When Every Word Counts by Joe Buccino is out there now, so please, I'll leave it to you for the last words if you have any, sir.
The only thing I would just say, I would give it right back to you, man, in that, I reached out to you 3 months ago and I was like, I'm going through this thing. Um, it's a very personal thing. I don't want people talking about it. And you went into your black box. You said, here's my thinking on this matter. Here's what I think you should do. But it never went anywhere. It just stayed within your own little black box, and you were faithful to that conversation and true to that conversation. And that was the critical feedback I needed at that moment. So, I just appreciate you being that resource for other people and for me, but not just for me, other people. And I think that just speaks to your heart and who you are as a leader and as a person.
I appreciate you, brother. Like it or not, we all we got is what I always tell my warriors, and I feel it applies to the same now. I do want to ask my last question. I know you got to go, but if someone was contemplating death by suicide and they're thinking about it, and you had the opportunity to speak to them, what is something you would say to them, my friend?
I would say I've been where you are. I've been where you are 3 times. Um, I'm glad I didn't do it because of the pain that would have caused the people that I love and the people that I care about. I think it would have been too great. It's a confusing and confounding and decisive thing in the lives of people that love you and the people that you love. And, if you can stay alive for long enough, you're going to find something where you thrive, where you're going to find something where you're fucking excited for your feet to hit the floor every morning. You're excited to go out there and whatever your job is or whatever your life circumstance is, eventually you're going to land on that. And so there's treatment out there for you. There's people who love you. There's people who care about you. There's 1-800 numbers. There's hospitals. There's a lot of resources out there. And so if you're thinking about going through that and you're thinking about making that decision or you're succumbing to this, I've been there. I've been there 3 times, and I like where my life is today. I like the place I am in society. I like the people I'm around, and I love what I do. And so eventually you're going to find that you just need to stay alive. Just take it day by day. Stay alive today. Don't do it today. Get to tomorrow. The next day, have that conversation with yourself. I'm gonna live through today. I'm gonna get through today. The next day, keep having that conversation, and eventually you're gonna see there's some other path for you, and some other life is gonna open for you, and eventually you're gonna thrive.
God, so well said. I'm gonna shut up on that one, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all heard him. Y'all heard him. Y'all heard him. Listen to it. Stay alive, and maybe eventually you will thrive. It happens, and you know what, Joe? I'm thankful that you're still around, my brother. I really am. You make the world a better place. You've helped make me better, and I appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 89 of Real Resilience Talk Podcast. Like I always say, we are inspired by the First Amendment and the words of Dr. Maya Angelou. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. And please understand that we are sponsored by Nobody, baby. Thank you, y'all. Thank you again, Joe.
All right, brother.
Talk to you later, man. Out.
Okay. Talk to you later. All right, man.